Ideas are signals hovering in the fourth dimensional plane of existence, waiting for people who will tune in their antenna to receive the ideas in the right frequency. You may be listening to me, you have the capacity to be creative in your own space, in your job, in your career, in your business, but because your mind is positioned wrongly, is focused on the wrong things, you're not getting the kind of ideas you should be getting from the fourth dimension. And when you're not getting those ideas, you will not be able to get the right pictures in your mind. You will not be able to use your imagination, which is a function of the images and the pictures that you have set your gaze on. Maybe you are listening to me and you have brilliant ideas, you have great suggestions, you have great things that you would like to do, and you've even written them down. You have powerful goals that you set for yourself for this year and objectives that you've decided that you will do. You have plans and activities that you've mapped out and mapped out. You have things that you've written in your journals and you've drawn out, but you've never implemented them. You've never taken action on those things. Until you move from the two-dimensional plane to the higher plane of reasoning and thinking, you will never be able to create the reality that you can have out of the vision that you have documented. Two-dimensional thinkers have so many ideas that are never turned into concrete plans, and if that sounds like you must break out of that cocoon of two-dimensionality and move to a higher plane of reasoning. Welcome to today's episode. Today I'm going to be discussing with you a topic that I find very, very compelling. And the topic is, what is fourth dimensional thinking and how does it relate to creativity? Now, if you listen to one of my previous episodes where I talked about where you can get creative ideas from, the fourth dimension was one of the channels that I outlined. And so today I'm going to be explaining in more detail what the fourth dimension is all about and how this relates to creativity. In other words, how you can actually get creative ideas from the fourth dimension. What is a dimension of thinking? A dimension of thinking can be seen as the way you see things, your perspective, your worldview, how you view things. Your dimension of thinking can also reflect your plane of existence, and it also impacts on how you approach problem solving. Now, before we get to fourth dimensional thinking, it is very important that we go through the different levels and the different stages before the fourth dimension, because there are zero-dimensional thinkers, there are one-dimensional thinkers, there are two-dimensional thinkers, there are three-dimensional thinkers, and then there are 4D thinkers. Who are zero-dimensional thinkers? Zero-dimensional thinkers are people who do not like to make progress. They like to stay in their comfort zone. They like to be in a stagnant position. They do not want any challenges. They do not want anything that will push them out of their comfort zone. These are people who stay in a job and do not want to make any leap, or do not want to advance their career, or don't want to expand their businesses even when there are opportunities to do so. In order to help you understand this, I'll tell you a quick story. Now, there was a famous auto mechanic who was very good at repairing Volkswagen Beetle vehicles. Now, this man was so popular because he knew how to repair these vehicles. He could drop the engine and dismantle all the parts and recouple it without batting an eye. He was so popular in his town, and he was known for being able to repair the Volkswagen Beetle car. Interestingly, as time went on, people began to move away from using the Volkswagen Beetle car, and they started getting more recent models, different brands of vehicles in that small town. People began to upgrade, and as they began to upgrade their cars, they needed someone who would be able to repair their cars. And they would take their cars to this same man and request for this man to take a look at their car and see if he could fix their vehicle. But this man would always send them away and tell them he only knew how to fix the Volkswagen Beetle car and was not interested in learning others, because he had been in this industry, because he had specialized in fixing the Volkswagen Beetle car all his life. And so he would always tell them, oh no, I don't do that. Now, this man continued with this attitude. Even when there were opportunities for him to upgrade his skills and adapt his skills to the trend of his days, he refused to improve himself. He stayed in his comfort zone, and before long, everybody in that town who had a Volkswagen Beetle car brought their cars to his workshop and abandoned their cars there. And this man ended up becoming forgotten because he refused to reinvent himself. Why? Because he was a zero-dimensional thinker. Now, zero-dimensional thinkers are people who refuse to move out of their comfort zone and they just stay in a spot all their lives. They stay in a spot in their career, they stay in a spot in their business, and they refuse to move. They refuse to explore new territories. They refuse to reinvent themselves. They refuse to evolve. They refuse to learn new skills. Now, these are zero-dimensional thinkers. And if you're listening to me and you are one of such, my goal today is that by listening to this, you'll be able to move from where you are to the fourth dimensional plane of thinking where everything is possible. Now, being educated, having good degrees, or being skilled and talented is not a one-way ticket to having a fulfilling life. And it is also not a one-way ticket to dominating in your industry or to excelling in your sphere of influence. Your success in your career and in your business would largely be dependent on your dimension of thinking. Now, there are people who are super talented, who are highly skilled, and who are highly educated, who are still limited in their life, in their business, in their career because of their dimension of thinking. And so it's not enough to have a good education, to have great skills, or to have multiple talents, because talent alone is not enough. Gift and skill alone cannot take you to the success that God has prepared for you. Education alone is not enough. You need to have the right dimension of thinking to be able to create the kind of success that God has destined for you to have. Now, the next category I'm going to deal with are the one-dimensional thinkers. Who are one-dimensional thinkers? Now, one-dimensional thinkers are similar to zero-dimensional thinkers, but the difference between zero-dimensional thinkers and one-dimensional thinkers is that one-dimensional thinkers have several abilities and several skills, but they refuse to actually explore them. They rather stick to one because they are unilateral in their thinking. They are only thinking in a tunnel when they should be seeing other pieces moving and how those pieces connect to what they can do and what they already do. They just stay in that tunnel. Now, 13 years ago when I was much younger, I was in the choir and I had a great singing voice. I still have a great singing voice, by the way, but 13 years ago when I was in the choir, I loved being a backup singer. I had a very sonorous tenor voice, and whenever I would sing as a backup, my voice would always stand out and people would just love the way I produced some melody and harmony for the lead singer. And so a time came when there was a huge and a big program on campus, and one of my friends who happened to be a lead singer and he happened to be a pianist and a guitarist, he asked me if I could lead the worship. But guess what? I turned down the opportunity. I told him, hey, this is not my thing. I'm a backup singer and I just want to stay there because this is what I do. And then he told me, if you can do backup very well, then you can lead very well, right? You have the ability to also be a good lead singer if you're a good backup singer. Now, when he said this to me, I went back and I thought about it and I said, wow. I said, okay, I gave it a shot. And the first time I actually took that lead role, I actually discovered that I did very well. Interestingly, and from then on, I continued to lead the worship and lead the praise, and I became among the top 1% singers in my time. Now, if I had limited myself to just being a backup, I would never have explored that part of me. I would never have explored that side of me. Now, the way God created you, He created you to be a multi-talented individual. He created you to be a multi-talented being. That's why I cringe when I see people who bury their talents, bury their gifts, bury their skills because they already have one thing going for them. They fail to recognize that they could actually leverage these other skills and make that one thing that they have going for them even better and make it even more successful if they would unlock the other areas that they're also gifted. Now, let's take a cue from Samsung. When that company was founded, it started out as a local store in South Korea. But today, Samsung employs hundreds of thousands of people across the globe. Wow, that is amazing. Now, if the founder of Samsung stuck to just being a corner shop where vegetables and noodles were being sold, guess what? The Samsung phones that you see around today would never have been. Maybe the Samsung electronics and gadgets that we all know today would never have come into being. Samsung broke out of the one-dimensional plane of thinking and reinvented the company over and over again through several iterations to become what it is today. And if you are listening to me and you are a one-dimensional thinker, it's time to begin to reinvent yourself or be forgotten. Now, the next category is for the two-dimensional thinkers. Now, in the two-dimensional plane of reasoning, we only consider two axes, the length and the breadth. So, for example, a two-dimensional thinker has great ideas on paper. He has great visions on paper. He has good business plans, but he never implements them. So those ideas remain in the 2D world. They remain ideas on paper that were never implemented. They remain business plans that were documented but never implemented. And that's why two-dimensional thinkers remain where they are. Maybe you are listening to me and you have brilliant ideas, you have great suggestions, you have great things that you would like to do, and you've even written them down. You have powerful goals that you've set for yourself for this year and objectives that you've decided that you will do. You have plans and activities that you've marked out and mapped out. You have things that you've written in your journals and you've drawn out, but you've never implemented them. You've never taken action on those things. Until you move from the two-dimensional plane to the higher plane of reasoning and thinking, you'll never be able to create the reality that you can have out of the vision that you have documented. Two-dimensional thinkers have so many ideas that are never turned into concrete plans, and if that sounds like you, you must break out of that cocoon of two-dimensionality and move to a higher plane of reasoning. Now, the three-dimensional thinkers are people who function in the realm of touch, sight, feel. These are people who take it a step further and take whatever they put down in their two-dimensional piece of paper or their journal or their book, and they take action. They implement those things and they try to see it work. They take what they have read in a book and they try to take action. They take what they have seen in the two-dimensional plane and they try to take action. And the three-dimensional plane is where you and I actually function. It's the realm of sight, hearing, touch, taste, and feel. And it's a good place to be, but it's not the best place to be if you are a creative who wants to function at the peak level of your creative capacity. And this brings me to the fourth dimensional plane of thinking. Now, what is fourth dimensional thinking? Well, to explain fourth dimensional thinking, I'd like to explain to you what the fourth dimension is all about. The fourth dimension is a realm bounded on the north by wisdom, bounded on the south by knowledge, bounded on the east by understanding, and bounded on the west by faith. I'm going to expound on this definition in a later episode, but for now, I want you to know that fourth dimensional thinking is the realm where God functions. You see, God was speaking in the book of Isaiah 55 verse 8 to 9, and he said, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my thoughts higher than your thoughts, and my ways higher than your ways." God's thoughts are the highest thoughts. God functions from the fourth dimensional plane of existence, and he thinks in that level. And for you to be able to create things by tapping into the fourth dimension, you want to also be able to think in that dimension, think in that level. The Bible says, by faith, we understand that the things which we see did not come from things which do appear. In other words, the things that we see in the third dimensional plane of existence came from the fourth dimensional plane of existence. In the fourth dimensional plane of existence, you cannot see things with your optical eyes. You cannot hear things with your physical ears. You're only able to plug into that realm through wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and faith. And that's why scripture says in the book of Hebrews 11 verse 3, that by faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made from the things which do appear. In other words, the things that we see with our optical eyes in the third dimension were not made from the things that are in the third dimension. They were made from the things in the fourth dimension, a realm that we cannot actually navigate with our physical senses. That is why it's so important to understand what ideas are. Ideas are signals hovering in the fourth dimensional plane of existence, waiting for people who will tune in their antenna to receive the ideas in the right frequency. So when you tune into the right frequency with your mind and with your spirit, you are able to actually get those signals. It's just like a radio wave. It's just like your satellite dish. You know, when you position your satellite dish to the right angle, you are able to actually get the right signals that will give you the right pictures in your TV screen. This brings to mind something that used to happen to me many years back. I had a satellite dish in my house, and with that satellite dish, I'll be able to see lots of wonderful channels all around the world. Now, whenever it rained, the position of this satellite dish would change, and when the position changes, the channels that I was supposed to be seeing will no longer be available. And what would I do? I would need to call in a technician who will come in and reposition the dish in the right angle using his tools. Now, this kept happening over and over again, and I would always call the technician to come fix the dish until I became a technician myself, because I had watched the technician fix the dish long enough. So whenever it happened, whenever the rain or the wind would shift that dish from position, I would just take my tools and reposition the dish and turn the right screws and ensure that I'm able to get the right signals. Now, that is how your mind functions. Your mind is like a satellite dish, but it needs to be repositioned and positioned in the right angle to get the right frequency. And that way, you're able to get the creative ideas in the fourth dimension. That's why it's so important how you condition your mind and position your mind to receive signals. When you allow your mind to be wrongly positioned, even though you have the potential for creativity, even though you have the potential for innovation, even though you have the potential for problem-solving ability, you may never be able to deploy those potential because you would not be receiving the right signals that you ought to be receiving, even though you have the tools for receiving it. So in those days, I had the satellite dish, but as long as the satellite dish was positioned wrongly, I was no better than those who didn't have the satellite dish and who couldn't see the stations that I was paying to see already. So you may be listening to me, you have the capacity to be creative in your own space, in your job, in your career, in your entrepreneurship endeavor, in your business, but because your mind is positioned wrongly, is focused on the wrong things, you're not getting the kind of ideas you should be getting from the fourth dimension. And when you're not getting those ideas, you will not be able to get the right pictures in your mind. You will not be able to use your imagination, which is a function of the images and the pictures that you have set your gaze on. And once that is lacking, once you're lacking in imagination, you'll be lacking in creativity. This brings to mind a man named R.G. Letourneau. Now, this guy was a dropout, but somehow he stumbled on the fourth dimension. He learned how to receive pictures from the fourth dimension, and by reason of that, he was able to secure 300 patents for different inventions of moving equipment of different shapes and sizes. Now, the significance of R.G. Letourneau's inventions and contributions to the construction industry is so massive because at the time when he started seeing pictures of earth-moving equipment, they were still using trucks and shovels, and he would be in a construction site, and as he would be working, he'll be seeing pictures, he'll be seeing things, he'll be seeing pictures of earth-moving equipment. As at that time, no one had conceived the idea of earth-moving equipment to the point of bringing it into reality. But R.G. Letourneau will keep seeing these pictures, he'll keep seeing these visions, he'll keep seeing these ideas of earth-moving equipment when he was working in the site. And as he tried to draw those images he was seeing when he was working in the construction site, he was able to condense those ideas into written form. And that was how he began to go about looking for ways to manufacture earth-moving equipment. Now, during the Second World War, R.G. Letourneau supplied the Allied forces 70% of their equipment. Wow, that is amazing. That is how powerful a man, a woman, a boy, a girl can be if he or she can connect to the fourth dimension and get ideas into his mind and crystallize those ideas into physical form, writing it down in a book and not just letting it stay and die in the book, but pulling it out from that book and bringing it into the third dimensional plane of existence where you and I can touch it, feel it, taste it, hear it, experience it, and benefit from the value that it presents. R.G. Letourneau received signals from the fourth dimensional realm of thinking and impacted the third dimensional plane of existence through 4D thinking. And so as you're listening to me today, if there's just one thing that you take from this episode, I want you to take the fact that you have the ability to be creative. All you need to do is to reposition your mind, to reposition the antenna of your mind, to reposition the satellite dish of your mind in a way that it can receive fresh ideas from the fourth dimension, from the highest frequency where God lives. Because that is how you're able to pull ideas from the fourth dimension and bring them into the third dimension. Now that brings us to the end of today's episode. I want you to watch out for my next episode because I have some really powerful things to share with you. And just before I go, I'm going to give you a quick recap of what I said today. Today, I shared with you what is fourth dimensional thinking and how does it relate to creativity. And basically, all that I've said so far has been pointing to explaining what fourth dimensional thinking is, starting from zero dimensional thinking to one dimensional thinking to two dimensional thinking to three dimensional thinking to fourth dimensional thinking. So zero dimensional thinkers are static, they never move, they never leave their comfort zone. One-dimensional thinkers are unilateral in their thinking, they refuse to explore other paths that they could take to where they need to go. Two-dimensional thinkers are two-dimensional in their thinking, they are erratic and random in their approach to things. They have wonderful ideas, but they never get anything done. They are never able to take action on the plans that they have written down in their journals or in their books. Three-dimensional thinkers are people who depend on how long they've studied, how wide they've studied, and how deep they've studied. Those are the three dimensions that they rely on. And so sometimes they can be caged in a box and they are unable to break out of that box. But fourth dimensional thinkers function from the higher plane of reasoning. They function from where God functions. And in that plane, you do not rely on what you've read or studied. You function from the fourth dimension into the third dimension. You set your gaze and your affection on the realm that is above this realm, and you superimpose those ideas into this realm of the third dimensional plane and bring those ideas into existence through creativity. I hope that you found this episode enlightening and impactful. If you found this episode valuable, I'd like you to drop me a comment in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to this in your favorite podcast app, I want you to drop me a review or subscribe to my podcast and subscribe to my channel so that you're the first to know when a new episode drops. Now, see you in my next episode. Until then, have a good one.